Good morning and welcome to today's School Finance Friday. My name is Monica Paz with School Finance. Today we're going to be talking about an introduction to integrity reports. So today's session we're going to go over updates in the beginning. At the very end, after we're done talking about introduction to integrity reports and going over a couple of the reports for you, we'll have an opportunity for you to do our Q&A session. So hang in there with me while we go through these reports together. But first, let's go through our updates. Exciting news. Help Desk, which is set to roll out in March, is going to be the new ticketing system that is currently self-service portal. The plan is to have that rolled out in March, so stay tuned for that. I'm sure that between school finance and the IT department, you'll be hearing much more about that new ticketing system. So keep an eye out for that. I think the plan is to have that in the same location that the self-service portal is. Stay tuned for that. Every month we get a question about where we are with the merge and split tool. I know that the field is aware that we've had some issues with the merge and split tool since the beginning, and then it's gone down in September and October. I do have some good news to share. The tool is currently in user acceptance testing mode, and we plan to have that rolled out very soon, so that the school finance department can start working on some of those merge requests that you've had and some of those split requests for the students who either have multiple state student IDs or have a shared state student ID. As soon as we are able to get started on those, you should start to see the tickets getting resolved. And we'll also make a bullet point is about the school facilities board requirements. This is specific to districts who have changes that they need to make to their entity, specific to grade changes, specifically adding grades. Again, this is specific to districts who are doing grade modifications and adding grades. The School Facilities Board has pointed out that there is a requirement for Arizona Revised Statute 15-341. Subsection G, if you're that interested in taking a peek at that, if you are modifying a grade or adding a grade to your district, one of the requirements is that you receive approval from the School Facilities Board. It is something that we are going to add to our guidance for the entity profile form. Keep an eye out for that, but it is something that as a district you should be aware, so that the people at your board, if they are making modifications to the grade levels served, there is an additional requirement that we're going to add to the entity profile. This next bullet point is also to districts. The SDER, sometimes called CEDAR or School District Employee Report, the window for final TEI modifications is open. It closes March 1st. Business managers or human resource directors are typically the people that are the ones submitting these types of modifications. The window is open, so if you are that person and that is your role, make sure that you are taking a peek at your TEI reports and that everything is exactly as you expect. If it's not, right now we have the opportunity to go in and make those final modifications. And again, the window closes March 1st. I should mention that March 1st is the drop dead deadline. That is in statute and there are no exceptions granted. So please make sure that if that is your role for the CEDAR report or SDER report, that you are making sure that that is exactly as you expect. And I actually don't have this on here, so I'll go a little off topic for districts again. Routes report is due for transportation. So if that is your role for a business manager, CFO, or transportation director, if you've logged on, welcome. Transportation routes is also coming up due 12 days after your 100th day, which for most schools is typically past or right about now. Today's session is going to be integrity reports. We'll go over the INTEG15 and we'll talk about the agenda in just a minute. But next webinar session, we're going to dive into the ADM reports. And that is going to be on March 6th, so please join us for that. We'll talk about the ADM15, dive into the ADM20, talk about the ADM15A, and we'll go over the details on those for March. So today I want to talk about contact information and our website information. We'll talk briefly about the AZEDS process. We'll talk about what is integrity. We'll go over the INTEG15 and the INTEG35 for calendars. My goal is to talk about the top integrity errors that we receive, additional assistance, and then at the very end we'll open up the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. If you needed to contact School Finance, you can always reach us at the number listed up at top. At this point, you'll have a prompt to either reach the budgets team, the payments team, or the SF analyst team for each one of the, whichever team that you need to reach out to, you'll be prompted to select from that main number. Or you can always reach us at sfanalystteam@az.gov. So before we dive into integrity, I wanted to make sure that we were on the same page as far as what is the AZEDS process, in case I do have some beginners with me. I want to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we're understanding what the AZEDS process is. If you're not a beginner, and this is a very introductory session for you, I still hope that you hang out so that at the end we can talk about the Q&A session, and that I hope that you actually still find value in understanding some of the top integrity errors that we go through. So hang in there with me as we talk about some of these introductory subjects. So for the AZEDS process, you may already know that AZEDS process runs every single night. Integrity runs every single night. Your system sends information or student data through the API, and that is open 24/7 unless there's scheduled maintenance. Integrity runs every single night at 5 or 6 p.m. and then shortly after that, ACE runs. When logging into the AZEDS portal, you always want to make sure that you stop here to verify that the status has been complete the next day. There's been a few bumps in the road, and sometimes if integrity isn't able to run, this would be an opportunity for you to see on the status on the right-hand side there that integrity didn't complete. So you can see here every single night where integrity kicked off and that it was completed. So before I go into just talking about integrity and the reports, we first need to understand what is integrity. Integrity is a set of rules that's defined by Arizona Rice Statute or ADE businesses, or ADE business. And what I mean by that is the individual departments within ADE. So we're talking about school finance, the ELL department, special ed department, accountability, and all the different program areas that impact integrity. It's run every single night on the data that you submit through your student information system. It runs every single night at 5 p.m. And then as a result of that, a report is generated to show either passed or failed. Typically, the report that you're going to pull for the integrity is you're immediately going to want to know which student elements failed. But if you are curious about the data going through, you can also run to see if data did pass integrity. And so integrity is broken up into different sections. And so the rules are broken up into these different numbers, if you will. So membership and the ones that have a direct impact on ADM are the 10,000 rules. So those are membership. There's some ADM impact for the accountability rules for the 20,000s. And then you'll see here 30,000s, 40s are for SPED and ELL, and those also have some impact on ADM. And then there's all the different subcategories for the different types of integrity rules. So let's take a look at where we find those integrity reports. So you would log into the AZEDS portal via ADE Connect. If you don't have access to this, you'd have to find out who your entity administrator is within your district so that they can grant you access to the AZEDS portal and give you access to the various roles within ADE Connect. So we're going to go into the AZEDS portal. And the two reports that we're going to look at again are the INTEG15 and INTEG35. The INTEG15 is listed under the student detail node, where the INTEG35 is listed under the calendar node. So here's a copy of, or an example of an INTEG15. At the very top, you'll have the opportunity to see the school name, the district ID, and so I've obviously blurred these out. And it has a student ID, last name, first name, integrity category. So here's where you would find the different category. And in this case, with these 10,000 errors, we're seeing that, and these 20,000 for accountability type errors, that these are ADM categories. If this were a program or ELL or SPED, you'd see that the integrity category would then say ELL or SPED. Integrity type is the number, again, associated with the integrity error description. It also tells you the severity of the error, if it's an error, if it's a warning, if it's informational. You'd see that here on this report. The error code, if you're reaching out and submitting a ticket, or you're calling school finance account analyst team to find the error code for additional assistance, we'll ask you what type of error you're receiving. For the better part, we do know most of these numbers by heart, but sometimes we'll ask you to let us know the description. And the description tells you what specifically is erroring out. So let's take a look at some of the top integrity warnings. We asked our friends over in the AZEDS team to send us an extract of what were the types of warnings they were seeing in the top warnings. So they gave us a spreadsheet over the last month or so, and I was able to filter out what are the top warnings that we're seeing right now. And so these warnings don't necessarily mean that ADM is impacted or that your student data has failed. But I did want to go over the difference, and so that you can see the types of warnings that we're seeing just across the state. Some of these are just simply warnings, specifically like the state birth code. This is just simply for you as informational to make sure that you're validating that the student's state birth code has been entered. That doesn't necessarily mean that the data is going to be impacted as far as your ADM. So let's actually go over some of the top integrity errors that we're seeing right now. And this was a big one as of recent, especially this week with data push. That was a fun day on Tuesday where the 10008, the grade level code not offered. Unfortunately, there was some tables on the back end that did not get updated, and it caused AZED's ACE to completely tank. So that was, as soon as we were able to identify that, we submitted a hot topic to the field. So this was the top one, and I'm assuming that this has something to do with the fact that this came up on the extract. The next error code, and I'll go over that in just a minute. This one is a repeat offender. I've seen this one time and time again, where the absence or attendance falls outside of the enrollment. So I'll give you a minute to kind of review those, and we'll go through each one of those and opportunities to resolve them, or reports that you can look at to help resolve them for yourself. So this one, again, if in an instance where the student, you are receiving this integrity error and we didn't do something that went completely awry in those instances, you want to make sure that this grade level that you're submitting, validate that the student that you're reporting this for, that you're submitting the right grade. You can validate this by either pulling up the Stud 72 or using the student analysis tool. To validate that the site that you're reporting, that this is an approved grade level, you can either utilize the Find a School website, or if it's a private day school, this ESS has a list of all of the private day schools and the grades that they're approved for. So just make sure that if this is an instance where you are submitting a student, that the grade level specifically for private day school, that you've taken a look at the spreadsheet that is posted on ESS Data Management at the following link. So here's the one where I was talking about the repeat offender, the 10091. absence or attendance falls outside of the enrollment. Unfortunately, we do see this a lot. You want to first start off by validating the student membership on the STUD 72. I should mention that the STUD 72 only shows attendance within the reported membership. So if you have a student specifically that was W4'd, let's say for example that they were W4'd on September 30th, but in August you had indicated that the student had received unexcused absences, but for whatever reason the student information system, when submitting that W4, did not submit the deletes, or the deletes for those specific days didn't land properly, and those attendants are still hanging out outside of that student's membership, the STUD 72 unfortunately is not going to indicate those absences, because it's only again going to show you the absences within that student's enrollment. So the report that you would want to utilize in that instance to identify that is the ABSAT 10. That report is a pretty robust report in that it shows you everything that's landed as far as attendance for the parameter that you've set up. What I typically do is I just do from the beginning of the fiscal year, 7/1/2019, and I just select 365 days so that I don't have to worry about making sure that the days weren't captured in that. The parameter for that up here for number of days that I'm talking about, if you set it for 180 days, it's only going to do 180 days, including Saturdays and Sundays, for the start date. So if you're utilizing 180 days from the beginning of the fiscal year, it's also taking into account the Saturdays and Sundays. And if you're looking for a date later on in the year, say in May, it's not going to capture those dates because it's 180 actual calendar days from 7/1. So just to save yourself the grief, my recommendation is to use 7/1 and 365 days. And in this student, you can see that the absences were reported for each one of these days that the student was absent, and this is for the entire school district. This is an example of an ABSAT 10 in the actual application. If you have a student information system that has the capability of deleting those absences outside of the student's membership, my recommendation is to pull this in a CSV format. So up at the top left-hand side, this will extract it into an Excel format. And in that Excel format, on the very right-hand side for each of those individual absences, you'll see the resource ID that you would need to be able to send a delete transaction from your student information system. So it's a super helpful report. But the hidden part of it is that you have to pull it up in CSV in order for you to have those resource IDs that you would need in order to send a delete transaction, so that you are not getting this attendance falls outside of the enrollment. 10096, attendance minutes are required for in-attendance reports. This is specifically for attendance that is reported for AOI, so Arizona Online Instruction, alternative schools that choose to submit minutes, preschool students, and actually homebound students as well that you are reporting attendance minutes for. If your student information is set up to send a value of 0 or null, you will receive this error. For the attendance minutes cannot be null or 0. If the student is not in attendance, you do not need to send a value. Integrity Code 10200, students who've received a high school diploma may not enroll in a public school. This one is also a repeat offender that we've unfortunately seen a little more often than any one of us would like to see. In this instance, if you are getting this error, you want to, likely the school that the student had previously attended, the year-end status code may have been submitted as a G for graduation rather than a P for promoted. We saw this a lot last year where 8th graders had been submitted with a year-end status code of G rather than a promoted. So if you are, especially in the beginning of the year, receiving this error for specific students, you'll want to reach out to the SF analyst team or to the accountability department so that we can help you identify if the student had a G code. Also, we did find sometimes where it happened in-house. So if you have a student that is returning to you from last year, my recommendation is in your SIS or in AZEDs for last year, validate on the student's STUD 72. I'm not sure why ABSAT 10 is on there, sorry. That the STUD 72 did not have a year and status code of G for that student. So the only way to fix this, unfortunately, is via a 915 process. I know that there is a bit of a backlog for the 915 process, but the account analysts have made that their priority to get some of those 915s moved out, because that is the only way to fix prior year data, specifically for these students that were submitted as a graduation code. And this was a new one, but not surprising one that I had seen for this year. I actually needed a little bit of help from my friends here to understand what this error was. So this one is 10124. It's regarding a calendar/track expected is not expected to. And so when it has those little errors expected one and those brackets there, that's a dynamic message. So you likely wouldn't see that expected one. You would see exactly the calendar code that it's referring. So if you are receiving this integrity error, this is likely because the way that you're sending the student data, likely in the setup in your student information system, is sending the wrong entity ID. And the best example that I can think of specifically is for the private day schools. If in this calendar code you're submitting, say, your entity, so 4900, let's say that is your LEA or district ID, entity ID level. The second is the entity ID code. Private day schools, similar to the way that districts and charter districts are set up, have a parent and child entity relationship. So likely if you're seeing this error, you're submitting the parent level or administrative level entity ID for the calendar code. So just make sure that if you are receiving this error, that you're validating that you do in fact have the correct entity ID listed within your calendar code and the setup within your student information system. So the INTEG35, speaking of calendars, this report is specifically for school calendar integrities. It doesn't seem as intense as the INTEG15. It lists the calendar code that it's referring to. It would have your LEA ID, the severity of the error, similar to the INTEG15. It also has the error code and error description. The biggest difference with the INTEG35 is that we have this very useful tool called the Calendar Reference Guide. If you are not familiar with that guide or that tool, and you are receiving these errors and you don't understand what it's saying, my recommendation is to navigate to the school finance homepage and hang out in our Knowledge Center. You'll see there that AZED's Calendar Integrity Reference Guide has been posted, and it goes through each individual integrity error that you would see here, and possible ways to resolve that. If after you've gone through here, and these are common ones that we see, especially in the beginning of the year, if you've gone and taken a peek at that and you still don't understand what the heck is going on, please absolutely reach out to the SF analyst team so that we can help you through that process. Speaking of additional assistance, please make sure that you are navigating to the Knowledge Center. There is a lot of information that we hope that is on there, and we hope to continue to update throughout the year. School finance memos are sent out once a month. It has opportunities for you to, specifically for districts, for the SDR memo, for transportation, and also hot topics. That is our primary source to reach the field in masses. So if you are not subscribed to get the notices when we post a hot topic, I highly recommend that you do that so that you make sure that you are always in the know, especially if we post a hot topic. And then of course, please make sure to email the SF analyst team if you have questions. And this is the end of the training for the INTEG15. At this point, I'd like to open up the Q&A session. So here we go. In a separate browser, or in the browser that you have right now, you can go to this site, slides.app.goo.gl/W9DAQ. We'll go ahead and open up the Q&A session so that if you have questions, this would be your opportunity for those questions. So I'll hang out for just a minute while those hopefully here we go. What's the status of the 64-1? So for those of us that are new here, the 64 is a student counts report that is posted at the end of every single data push and at the end of the month that indicates the payment for your charter or district. Unfortunately, as of right now, I do not have a status update for the 64-1. That's the report that indicates the actual dollar value that your charter district or district is set to receive for the monthly apportionment. I don't have a status, unfortunately, for that one. As soon as we have any sort of information, we will make sure to post that on Hot Topics, but it is something that is high priority to the school finance team, I can assure you that. So next one, if a grade is changed in a student's course history from a prior year, do you have to file a 15-915? I'm not sure the specifics of a student course history. The only thing that I can assume is that you're talking about the course history that has been submitted to AZ specifically for STC. Then at that point, my answer would be no, only because course history is not something or a resource ID that is available via the 915 process. So my initial response is no. If that doesn't answer your question, because it seems like a very specific instance, please send me an email at the SF Analyst Team inbox, and I'll be more than happy to dig in with that with you. But it seems like this is specific to STC data. Is the teacher EdFi same as the parent ID? My initial response is no. Teacher EdFi or parent IDs is not something that school finance manages. If you have questions regarding teacher EdFi ID, I believe the highly qualified department for certification can answer those specific questions. And if you have questions regarding a parent EdFi ID, the ADE support team would be the department that you want to speak to specific for those parent EdFi IDs. Question regarding the membership report that just recently rolled out. Did the MEM 10 change names?
Hi, this is Irene. Yes, we've been making some modifications to the MEM 10 based on some feedback that we received from the field. We are working with them on the QRG. You'll see some additional changes to that report. They should be enhancements, and those are requests that did come from the field, but it is the same report.
Great question, because I didn't know the answer to that because I'm new here. I thought it was funny. That's fine. The good thing about that is that know that the response and the feedback that you sent us specific to the reports and anything that we do as far as the Knowledge Center trainings, we do take that into account. So yes, the answer is it did change, and it was based off of feedback that we received from you. Status of the merge tool, if you missed it in the beginning of the presentation, the good news was that the merge tool is in user acceptance testing. It is very, very soon we're going to roll that out. We will be posting Hot Topics when we are ready to start merging those tickets. I can understand the frustration, and 100 tickets, holy moly. Let's talk about what we can do to make sure that we're not generating those duplicate SACE IDs. I think that's probably a bigger conversation for not now. But the good news is that that tool should be set to roll out, and it is a priority for the SF Analyst team. So as soon as we are able to get started on that, we will make sure to let you know, and I'm sure that you will be notified as soon as those merges are complete. Great question. And are teachers resolved to the same EdFi as their parent person? I'm not so sure if that's so much a question or a comment. Again, teacher IDs and parent IDs is not something that school finance manages. But if you do have questions, I believe that the highly qualified or certification does manage the teacher IDs, as well as with the parent IDs. You'd want to talk to somebody in ADE support. I don't think that school finance is the guy, and I want to make sure that you are reaching the expert for that question or comment. And I'll just wait a little bit because I don't see any new questions on here. So I will hang out for just a minute, but before I do, I'm going to go to the next slide that has the SF Analyst team. If you're not familiar with the email, this is a team box, so any one of us can reach out and respond to you via the SF Analyst team at az.gov inbox. I am not seeing any new questions. If you have additional questions as I'm starting to wrap up here, please make sure that you are emailing the team. And if you don't have questions or you simply have feedback, I welcome it. I look forward to hearing from you. And I will see you or hear from you next month.